Meet Andrei Chikatilo. For 12 years, he was an invisible murderer. He was born in 1936 in a tiny Ukrainian village during the Holodomor, the state-induced famine that killed millions. His family were poor peasants. His father was conscripted into the Red Army, captured by the Germans, and returned home branded a potential traitor by a government that stigmatized its own prisoners of war. The family slept on a dirt floor, sharing space with livestock. There were stories, possibly embellished, possibly not, that an older brother had been kidnapped and eaten during the famine. That was the world Chikatilo grew up in: hunger, shame, and the constant presence of death. He was small and sickly in school, bullied, humiliated. He suffered from hydrocephalus at birth, which caused genital urinary problems, including bedwetting into his late adolescence, and later an inability to maintain an erection. His first sexual encounter as a teenager ended in immediate humiliation, and he was mocked for it. But here's what makes Chikatilo so deeply unsettling. He didn't fall apart. He didn't become a visible wreck. He did the opposite. He became completely normal-looking. He got educated, became a teacher, married a woman named Faina in 1963, had 2 children, a settled, unremarkable marriage. He joined the Communist Party. He was the kind of man you passed in a corridor and immediately forgot. Average height, glasses, unremarkable face, the kind of man no one looks at twice. Which is exactly why he was able to kill for 12 years before anyone stopped him. The first known murder was December 22, 1978. A 9-year-old girl named Lena Zakatona lured near a river in Shakti. Police were shocked. An investigation opened. And then, nothing. The case stalled. Investigators pinned the murder on a convenient suspect. An innocent man was convicted and executed. The state closed the file and declared the problem solved. Meanwhile, Chikatilo kept going. Throughout the early 1980s, the bodies kept appearing. He hunted at train stations, bus stops, and the edges of wooded areas, targeting runaways, children traveling alone, vulnerable women, people that the system didn't notice quickly when they disappeared. He would approach calmly, talk normally, offer them some money or food, or offer to show them something interesting or walk with them somewhere, and then lead them away. By 1983, investigators in Moscow finally realized they were dealing with something the Soviet state had no framework for and no desire to acknowledge: a serial killer. In Soviet thinking, serial killing was considered the exclusive product of the decadent West. It wasn't supposed to exist here. Admitting otherwise was politically dangerous, so the case was handled quietly, awkwardly, with one hand tied behind its back. A task force formed. Detective Viktor Burakov was assigned to lead it in the Shakti area. Burakov was methodical, persistent, and increasingly desperate. The forensic evidence pointed to a killer with blood type AB based on samples recovered from crime scenes. The team built a profile, surveilled train stations, watched, and waited. In 1984, Chikatilo was actually detained, spotted behaving suspiciously at a bus station, and found to have been molesting a young girl. They had him, right there, in custody. And then they ran his blood type. It came back as type A, not AB, the type found at the crime scenes. They let him go. What no one knew, what forensic science at the time couldn't explain, was that Chikatilo had an extraordinarily rare biological condition. His blood type didn't match his semen type. It was a 1 in a million anomaly that made every biological sample at every crime scene appear to point to a different man. The science failed. He walked out of custody and continued killing. 15 more victims in 1984 alone. Burakov, by now, was quietly unraveling. His superiors pressured him to pursue homosexuals, mentally ill men, anyone who could be a plausible suspect. He was forced to shake down communities and chase pointless leads. False confessions piled up from people broken under Soviet interrogation methods. None of them were the killer. At least 3 innocent men were convicted and executed for murders that Chikatilo committed, while the real killer remained free. Each wrongful conviction bought Chikatilo more time. Desperate, Burakov made a move that was quietly radical for a Soviet detective. He secretly consulted a psychiatrist named Alexander Bukhanovsky, who specialized in studying American criminal profiling methods. Bukhanovsky built a profile. The killer, he said, was between 45 and 50, married, with children, outwardly respectable, suffering from sexual dysfunction that could only be resolved through violence. Not obviously crazy, not visibly deranged, completely normal-looking. The profile was almost perfectly accurate, and yet the killings continued. By 1988, after a brief quiet period where investigators dared to hope it was over, Chikatilo resumed. 19 more victims over the next 2 years. He was taking greater risks, killing closer to public areas, moving faster, growing bolder. It was as though the longer he evaded capture, the less afraid he became. Then, on November 6, 1990, a patrolling officer near a train station noticed a man behaving suspiciously. Disheveled, mud on his coat, emerging from a wooded area near a recent crime scene. The officer took his details, cross-referenced against the investigation, and the name came back. Andrei Chikatilo. He was arrested on November 20, 1990, refused to say anything at first. Then, Burakov made one final decision. He brought in Bukhanovsky, the psychiatrist who had built the profile. Not as an interrogator, as someone who simply wanted to understand. Chikatilo, clearly flattered by the attention, opened up completely. He confessed to everything, led investigators to undiscovered grave sites, and claimed 56 victims. In the trial was chaos. He was held in an iron cage in the courtroom to separate him from the victims' families, who threw objects at him and screamed throughout the proceedings. He was convicted of 52 murders. On February 14, 1994, Valentine's Day, he was executed by a single shot to the back of the head. The system was looking for a monster, not knowing he looked like everyone else.